We are going to be in Exodus chapter 24 this evening. Exodus chapter 24. In the previous three chapters, God was giving commandments to Moses to share with the people, and commandments on how to run their country. Even if you look back in chapter 21, he says, "Now these are the judgments which thou shalt set before them," referring to the people of Israel, specifically the judges that Moses, we had read, had set over the nation to help in making judgments and taking care of things to lighten his load. And so these commandments were really about setting up a God-centered society, a society that would function well and that would work well, that would also still be following the Lord, would be focused on Him and the things that God expected from His people and the way that they needed to conduct it. Not just simply to be obedient to God, although that's important, but also for their benefit, because God's commandments, they are for our benefit, for our edification. And so when we get into chapter 24, we have Moses coming down from these first few chapters, these things that we are looking at. And he writes these things down and presents them to the people of Israel. And we have them agreeing to these commandments. And then we see this covenant, the contract as you were, and Israel being willing to follow these things and to conduct their country in this way, and God to be their God and to guide them and to help them and to make them great. We even see at the end of chapter 23 that he talks about the way that he's going to work whenever they get to the promised land, and that he's going to help them to conquer the land, and that he's going to prepare the land for them. And so there's these things that God's told them, hey, I'm doing these things for you, but in order for you to see the benefits of these, you have to follow me. You have to do the things that I'm telling you to do, okay? And so these things we just looked at, they were given to Moses. Now Moses is going to give them to him. Israel is going to agree to it. God also instructs Moses to, after that, bring 70 elders of Israel along with a few other men with him, and God gives them a view of himself. And then we see that Moses ascends to the top of the mountain to receive more from the Lord. So we begin with this here, and we look at Exodus chapter 24, and let's look at the first three verses. It says, "And he said unto Moses, Come up unto the Lord, thou and Aaron and Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and worship ye afar off. And Moses alone shall come near the Lord, but they shall not come nigh, neither shall the people go up with him. And Moses came and told the people all the words of the Lord and all the judgments, and all the people answered with one voice and said, All the words which the Lord hath said, we will do." And so, as I mentioned in the previous chapters, this was only Moses that was receiving these things. The Lord began all of it by giving them the Ten Commandments. And if you look over in chapter 20, and in verse 19 through 21, we see the people, they respond to what the Lord gives in this when he speaks to all of the people of Israel. They hear this, verse 19 of chapter 20. It says, "And the people said unto Moses, Speak thou with us, and we will hear, but let not God speak with us, lest we die. And Moses said unto the people, Fear not, for God is come to prove you, that his fear may be before your faces, that ye sin not. And the people stood afar off, and Moses drew near unto the thick darkness where God was." And so the people, after hearing these commandments, seeing the thunderings and the lightnings, they get fearful. And they retreat from the Lord. They tell Moses, hey, we want you to go and talk to him now. We want he can just tell you everything, and then you can come and tell us everything. And so from chapter 20, verse 22, all the way to chapter 23 and verse 33, it's being given to Moses. And we see that he gives us instruction here to Moses. He calls him to come up to him and to bring Aaron and Nadab and Abihu and 70 of the elders of Israel and worship ye afar off. They're not to come all the way, they're to be a ways off. We know Nadab and Abihu. They were the two eldest sons of Aaron. We see that in Exodus chapter 6 and verse 23. And then we see 70 elders called out. And it says, of the elders of Israel, this is probably just the 70 chiefest, as it were, that are called off. And they're told to come along with Aaron and to worship the Lord. And he tells them it really is for them to come from the people, but to not go. And we'll see verse 2, it says, Moses alone shall come near the Lord, that they would come part of the way and they would worship the Lord, and then Moses would go the rest of the way to the presence of God, to come near him, to be given everything that is there. But before God would let them, before God would have Moses come, they were to stop and to worship the Lord. And I think this important, and we'll see the Lord's going to do something with this time as well. But the Lord is instructing them to come and to worship afar off and spend time really preparing and thinking of the Lord and worshiping him, as it were, praising him, reflecting on what he has done for them, what he is going to do for them, to be prepared to continue receiving the things that God is going to give to them, to be humbled and to be clear in that time. And Moses was to come closer, but he was to first worship as well with them. And so we see in verse 3 that Moses comes and he tells the people all the words of the Lord. And the people respond and they say, all the words which the Lord hath said, we will do. Now, this isn't the first time that they've said we will do what the Lord commands us. Back in chapter 19 and verse 8, they had also committed to this more of in a general sense. Things hadn't been clearly laid out in specifics as we have here, or as we have been given so far and as will be continued. But here again, after hearing the things that the Lord has given to Moses, they again say, yeah, we agree. We can do these things. We will do these things. We will make the Lord a priority for them. And it's kind of, I think a lot of us were aware of where we'll go, but later we'll get into later when we get into chapter 32, we'll see that the golden calf that Aaron makes, the people ask for the God, and it's a very short time. It's while Moses is up on the mount for 40 days and 40 nights that the Lord sends him back down after this had taken place. And so within 40 days, they've already given up these things that we're going to see, but they're proclaiming it here. They're saying they're going to. Obviously, the heart is not fully there and how quickly they change, but they do in one accord answer to this. And so we continue into verse 4. And it says, And Moses wrote all the words of the Lord, and rose up early in the morning, and builded an altar under the hill, and 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Israel. And so we see after speaking all of it, Moses goes and he writes down all of these things that the Lord had given to him, obviously underneath the leadership of the Holy Spirit and being accurate with these things, as we know. But he goes and writes all these things down. And the reason is, just having it verbalized it isn't enough. It needs to be written down to be very specific in what it is, because I think we're all aware of how good the human recollection is, the human passing on of things. We've all been probably part of the, or heard at least of a time. So you tell one person something, and they turn around and tell the other person the same thing, and you get 10 people down, and it's something totally different, right? So we need it written down to be specific in it. And so Moses goes and he writes it down to make sure that it's specific so that our recollection, our nature, our memory cannot change it, could not change it for them. And I want us to notice this, that God has separated for himself a peculiar people. He separated for himself this nation. And he is beginning it by giving them their governing documents, as it were, giving it very clearly written down for them. I want us to think about this too, that this is written down and it's given to all the people. And this covenant, these commandments, they're not for each. They're not for an individually person or an individual set of rules for each one. It is one set for everybody, right? And it kind of goes against what a lot of times people want, the way people want things to go, and saying, oh, I've got my own set of rules that I follow. Some will even make comment today, me and God, we have an understanding, as it were. But it's always been one way. Very clearly, even for this case with Israel, they're all given exactly the way it is, the same way. In God's Word, He's always made sure that His will, His expectations, His grace, His love, everything about Him has been revealed to us in His Word and has been revealed through time with the purpose of us being able to understand it. Even Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 2, and the Lord answered me and said, write the vision, make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. And in it being written down, being made very clear, it sets us up to be able to go and to run in the right direction. It removes the opportunity, as much of an opportunity. There's still always the opportunity for a hardened heart to reject and go and do what one wants to. But one that is really, truly wanting to know what does God desire, can go and can read God's Word and understand this is where we're going. We see after writing these things down, Moses goes and he builds an altar upon the hill, and he builds 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Israel. And we see verse 5, it says, and he sent young men of the children of Israel, which offered burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offerings of the oxen unto the Lord. Moses took half of the blood and put it in basins, and half of the blood he sprinkled on the altar. And he took, the blood of the covenant and read in the audience of the people, and they said, all that the Lord hath said will we do, and be obedient. And so we continue with this, and Moses, he goes and he makes the altar with the 12 pillars for the 12 tribes of Israel. And he selects young men to offer the offerings. Nothing special about them except they were young and physically able to do what needed to be done. And so he selects them to go and to do this, and he takes the words that had been written down, and again, he reads them to the people. He makes it very clear, these are the things that God's expecting. These are the things that God is wanting. Giving them another opportunity to clearly understand what is being asked of them, what is being required of them, and to go with it. And we notice here that with this one, when they respond again, and that the people, they said that all the Lord hath said we will do, which is the same as what we had in verse 3, when it says at the end of it, that all the words which the Lord hath said we will do. And this time, they add to it, and be obedient. That they're reaffirming it clearly and adding to it, yes, we are going to do this. We are going to go in this way. And so the nation now had what they were agreeing to written down, and now it will be set, ratified, accepted When we look at here in verse 8, and Moses took the blood and sprinkled it on the people and said, Behold the blood of the covenant which the Lord hath made with you concerning all these words. Right, the ratification of this was going and taking in the blood sprinkled on the altar and then sprinkled on the people, the two sides of it saying, we're in agreement with this. We'll go in this way. We'll follow these things. You know, in a way, our covenant with God follows the same pattern. The words of God have been given to us for us to read, for us to hear, for us to understand. The sacrifice was made by Christ, and we can receive God's words and then receive the blood sacrifice of Christ. Salvation. After this, we see that Moses now with the elders returning to the mount. We look at verse 9. It says, Then went up Moses and Aaron and Nadab and Abihu and 70 of the elders of Israel. And they saw the God of Israel, and there was under his feet, as it were, a paved work of sapphire stone, and as it were, the body of heaven in his clearness. And upon the nobles of the children of Israel he laid not his hand. Also they saw God and did eat and drink. We see in this that God reveals himself here to the 70 elders, to Moses, Aaron, Nadab, and also Abihu in this. And the way this is described in that it really just talks about his feet and what his feet are on, it's believed that all they saw was the lower half, whether they kept their heads down or whether that was all God showed, was the feet. But we see that what he is walking on is described as being sapphire stone and was like the sky in its clarity, pure, clear. And this aligns with what we see in Revelation and Ezekiel. Also, Revelation chapter 4 and verse 6 says, And before the throne, speaking of the throne of God, there was a sea of glass like unto crystal. Ezekiel 1 and 22 says, And the likeness of the firmament upon the heads of the living creature was as the color of terrible crystal, stretched forth over their heads above. And then Ezekiel 1 and 26, And above the firmament that was over their heads was like the likeness of a throne, as the appearance of a sapphire stone. That we're given these things that even with this, and then these others, we see this description of it having the vases before being like crystal, and then the throne itself being as sapphire. We're told as well here that the Lord did not lay his hand on them, and it may in a way here be talking about just not touching them. But I think another thing that goes with this too is we go back whenever we looked already at the people when they heard the thunderings of the Lord. They heard him speak the Ten Commandments, and they said, Moses, you go in our place. We don't want to talk because we don't want to die, right? Well, it tells us that he did not lay his hand on them, and also they saw God and did eat and drink. And I think the importance here, one of the purposes that could be with us as well in pointing this out, is that they weren't hurt and they weren't slain by seeing the presence of the Lord. Because that was their fear for coming close, right? Was that they didn't want to die. But now we have these elders, along with those with Moses, that they see him and they are not slain. They're not even hurt. Their opportunity to be in the presence of the Lord. I think the purpose here is this in showing them that they had no reason to fear if they were following him. If they're following him, like Moses spoke, they only have reason to love him, to be excited for his presence, not fearful. And this would place them in a place to be more willing to believe the will of God as given through Moses later on. We continue now, and we see verse 12, Moses going up the rest of the way. It says, And the Lord said unto Moses, Come up to me into the mount, and be there, and I will give thee tablets of stone and a law and commandments which I have written, that thou mayest teach them. And Moses rose up, and his minister Joshua, and Moses went up into the mount of God. And he said unto the elders, Tarry ye here for us until we come again unto you. And behold, Aaron and Hur are with you. If any man have any matter to do, let him come unto them. So we see that the Lord calls Moses to come closer, and he takes Joshua with him. We saw Joshua for the first time back in chapter 17, verses 8 through 16, in leading the battle against the Amalekites. We see that he led Israel while Moses, Aaron, and Hur were up on the hill, and Moses offering prayers to the Lord and holding up his hands. Whenever the hands were risen, Israel succeeded in the battle. But yet, whenever they fell, Amalekites were successful. And so in order to continue with the battle, we see that Moses sits down on the rock, and it is Aaron and Hur that hold up his arms, that support his arms while this battle is going on, so that they can have the victory. And so we saw that with Joshua. Now we see him as Moses' minister or Moses' assistant here. And we know Joshua later would be one of the 12 spies and one of two that would support going into Israel and being victorious and knowing that the Lord will help them. We'll see also Joshua is the one to succeed Moses. So even at this time, Joshua is already being taught and learning how to do these things, and is trusted by Moses and by the Lord in being allowed to come this far. But we see that Moses, before he leaves, he tells Aaron and Hur that they are to be the ones, they're the ones in charge. They're the ones to be leading. If you have problems, in my stead, you go to Aaron and Hur. And as already mentioned, they were a part of the battle with the Amalekites and holding them up. They were already supporting Moses, and Moses had reason to trust them. Sadly, as I mentioned later on, chapter 32, while Moses is up on the hill, we'll see Aaron specifically mentioned as making a golden statue and failing of leading the people during this time, which was only for 40 days. As we continue, we see also verse 15. It says, And Moses went up into the mount, and a cloud covered the mount. And the glory of the Lord abode upon Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And the seventh day he called unto Moses out of the midst of the cloud. And we have all of this where the Lord has already spent time with Moses, talking to him, sharing these things. And we already have this indication from the Lord, hey, Moses, I'm going to have you come up here, and I'm going to give you these things, I'm going to do these things. And yet Moses has this point where he stopped. He left Israel with the elders, and then he went partially up the mountain, and now he's stopping, or he started to go up with the elders, and now he's gone up another section with Joshua and waited again for the Lord to have him wait another 6 days before it. I think this is important to always point out, especially with the way that we are as people, is we're very impatient, right? We want things quickly. We want things fast. God's already told Moses, hey, this is where we're going. This is what we're going to do. But yet he has Moses spend 6 days waiting, preparing, getting ready for the Lord. And this isn't unique to Moses. This is a part of Scripture. We see it everywhere of waiting. Even Christ was 30 before his ministry. His ministry began. There was a lot going on. He wasn't just doing nothing the whole time. And that was Christ. There's always things that the Lord is doing in preparing us or preparing others, preparing different circumstances. We should never be discouraged by having to wait, but encouraged. See it less as a disgrace or a problem and more as an opportunity to prepare. I think it's important for us to remember Saul, and King Saul, and what happened to him. In 1 Samuel 13, 8, and 9, we see that Saul got impatient, waiting for Samuel to come along to offer a burnt offering, right? He was waiting, and he got tired of waiting for Samuel to come along. He said, okay, I'm just going to do it myself. And he had no longer finished than when Samuel showed up, right? And what happened to Saul after that point? The Lord told him, he said, I'm removing you. I'm no longer with you. I have chosen another man to be mine. You're on your own, and the kingdom is no longer going to grow under you. In fact, what we see is that the kingdom actually is overtaken, that a lot of ground is lost to the Philistines specifically because of, or while Saul was king. There were a lot of problems that happened, all because Saul couldn't wait another day. And he took things into his own hands, tried to move God's plan along. It's a dangerous thing. You never know what God's doing. We see on the seventh day, Moses is called up out of the midst of the cloud. It says, "In the sight of the glory of the Lord was like devouring fire on the top of the mount in the eyes of the children of Israel. And Moses went into the midst of the cloud and gat him up in the mount. And Moses was in the mount 40 days and 40 nights." We see that at this time now, Moses goes up and spends this time there being given by the Lord. Beginning next week, we're going to start looking at different things within the tabernacle and the furniture within it. Do we have any